I hope it doesn't interfere. So we have to do the verse number 20th. We had finished that. Karya karana kartutve hetuhu prakriti ruchyate purushaha sukha dukhanang bhoktrutve hetu ruchyate. Now we have already discussed at length that this Purusha, which we are discussing in the 13th chapter, and the Prakriti are paryaya vachi, are other ways of designating same para prakriti and apara prakriti as discussed in chapter 7 and in the beginning of this chapter, which are referred to as Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So the Purusha here is actually the Kshetrajna, or what was referred to as the para prakriti in chapter 7, in order to make it very simple so that we are not confused. It's not the Purusha of the Sankhya. Now, what Bhagavan will say that this Parama Purusha, the Atma is one, but Sarira Avachedana, because we have so many, Sukshma and Stula Sariras which are formed, then this particular thing, that Chaitanya in him, that is the Paraprakriti reflected in that particular system, and that is what is being referred to as Prakriti and Purusha. And the Prakriti is sort of is explaining the Shodasa Vikaras that we discussed in the last class, that the 16 Vikaras together, and this whole thing. And these Shodasa Vikaras are the Karyas. Sapta Prakriti Vikridayaha Karanam. What are the Sapta Prakriti Vikridayaha? They are Buddhi and these Ahankara and these 5 Tanmatras. So they are the 7 Prakriti Vikriti. And the Vikaras are the 16 Manas, 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas, and a Panchabhuta. These are the 16. And then you have Mula Prakriti, right? So out of Mula Prakriti comes Buddhi, then Ahankara, and then Tanmatras, and you have Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. Mana also comes out, okay? So these vikaras, all that, Sodas Vikara Karyam, Sapta Prakriti Viktaya Karanam, Tani Eva Karya Karanani Uchyate, Tesa Kartutva Hetu Prakriti Uchyate Arambhakatvena. Why is the Prakriti supposed to be the cause of that Karya Karana? The Karya Karana Sanghata is this whole thing. Karya is Sarira, Karana is the Indriyas we have. So this whole complex, the human complex, how it gains agency is the question. It gains agency. What is the cause? The cause is Prakriti only. And what is that Prakriti? Is the Apara Prakriti as mentioned. And he's mentioned that Sadha Apara Prakriti. And then the whole material universe, the Jada universe, the material universe has manifested. Purusha refers to the subjective aspect, because even if you have a material body with all the indriyas, without that experiencer, the instruments we have been given to experience the universe will be of no use. And therefore, there has to be something which enables the body to be alive, to experience anything. And therefore, that is this Paraprakriti or Purusha or Kshetrajna. And then he explained at length that what exactly is this Bhoktritva? What is this Bhoktritva? How does that happen? This Purusha, how it becomes a cause? And he explains it's because of this particular thing, this I want to experience this. This is what I'm happy, I'm sad. It's all about your involvement with certain material processes and how you psychologically relate to it, that you describe yourself as happy or sad. Just imagine there is a certain film which is playing in the town, and there are 5 boys in the college. They are walking through that film, what do you call it, film hall or mall or whatever you call it, or film talkies. Now, when they're passing through the theater, there's one guy who's busy thinking about his examinations. So he doesn't even look at that theater. He doesn't even know what film is running there. And then the second guy looks at this film theater, and he's very angry because he sees the face of a hero or a star or a heroine whom he dislikes. And he gets angry. so he becomes dukhi. The third guy is super happy because he likes the music director's name and he has already heard a few songs, the trailers on television or radio, whatever. So he is a little happy. He says that maybe the songs will be good. I don't know about the movie. And the fourth guy is extremely happy because the stars' face, which are there, splashed on the in the advertising wall or whatever they call it, billboards. He finds there's a guy and a girl and a couple of other actors, and he knows them and he likes them. So he's very happy. He wants to watch it. And and the fourth guy, he likes them all, but he doesn't have the money with him. See, there are five guys having five kinds of experiences. There is just one Vishaya. Now tell me, what is the cause of happiness or sadness of these people? Does it have anything to do with the film? You can say, yes, the film is responsible, but if we go deeper, we realize it has a lot to do with what we are already carrying with us, physically and subjectively, mentally. So the situation is that one guy has exams, so he's least bothered about all this. The second guy is angry because, or he's just bored because he doesn't like these stars. Third guy is kind of equivocal, but he wants to experience maybe music, may be good, but he'll not go to see the movie. He just likes the songs. Fourth guy is super happy, has got money, he'll go. The fifth guy is super happy, he likes the movie, he likes the stars, doesn't have money, so he cannot go. He is the guy who is most deprived. Okay, is the most deprived guy. The second guy is the one who dislikes these characters. He's also a little unhappy. And in the middle is the guy who likes the music. The guy who is actually super happy because he's not even bothered about all this. He neither has money nor has interest. He has something else to do. He has exams to prepare for, and he's just crossing through it. He looks at the screen. He said, "What is the discussion about?" Because his mind is preoccupied about his own exam. So he has a different kind of tension in his mind. So this sansara, this bhoktritva, ultimately Sankaracharya is saying, Sukha Dukha Sambhoga Sansara Purushasya cha Sukha Dukhanam Sambhuktritvam Sansaritvam iti. So Kahapuna Ayang Sansarinam, the sansara, in a way, you see this whole Purusha, the bhoktritva. We have a body and we have indriyas, will not necessarily make us sansari. Please look at, there is a spiritual message here. The Purusha is again born out of what Purusha I have, what Purusha another person has, what kind of subjective being I have, and whatever another person may have, has a lot to do with our previous Papa Punya. And that is how there is a certain conditioning of my individual consciousness, which explains how I look at something, right? So, how I look at something is kind of conditioned by my previous experiences, my previous likes and dislikes, and this conditioning enables me or disables me to or from experiencing. It sort of enables me to experience something or disables me not to experience something, and call it good or bad or ugly, depending on whatever is there on the table. And then this whole involvement in experiencing, developing some attachment and liking, that is what is sansaritva. So the saint and the sinner, the studious guy and the financially oriented guy and the business guy and the criminal, all of them have more or less same prakriti, isn't it? The systems are all same. So it is that subjective, that content, that para-prakriti in a way, which has a lot to do with their previous likes, dislikes, and sanskaras and education, and whatever philosophy they have been carrying out, sort of carrying with them consciously or unconsciously, sort of determines, and that is what is saying his bhakti. What is he going to experience in life? Okay. So the next verse, having discussed it, we are now going to discuss what do we experience in life, why we feel sad or happy, and what exactly happens in our system when we describe ourselves as happy. That is the question. So he says, Purusha prakritisto hi bhukte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasongasya sadasya yoni janamasu Purusha prakritisto hi bhukte. So this Purusha established in Prakriti, he is the one who experiences, because this Purusha, without having a stula sharira, without having this mind body complex, cannot experience anything, isn't it? So he has to sort of abide in this frame to be able to experience what he calls sukha or dukha. And what does he experience? Prakritijan guna. What is the guna here? Because in Nyaya Darshana, Sukha, Dukkha, these are gunas, qualities. Okay? So these are the qualities he experiences. He sort of connects with these qualities. And why he's born in different kind of settings, which anyway explains what sort of conclusion he will draw from whatever experiences he passes through. Karanam guna sango asya. Guna sangaha asya. Asya kasya jivasya purushasya. So that Purusha, his connectivity or affinity or sannidhi or connectivity is the right word, with these gunas, sattva, tamas, and rajas, and these sukha dukkha, both the ways, that is the cause as to why he is likely to be born in a good family or a bad family, as a god or as an animal or as a human being in future. So there are two things here kind of hinted here, and both are very important. Number one, in a certain way, what we are carrying within will largely influence to a significant degree what are the things we may feel attracted to. And then there is a warning sign there saying that what way we connect with what we call our happiness or sadness sets the tone for which ways we are going to take birth in the next life. I mean, forget about next life. If you're a very rational person, even if you don't believe in it, let's try to understand it in the context of the limited time we have here on earth as human beings. Let's imagine a life is actually one episode of what we call life. Because if we don't believe in reincarnation, we can still make sense of what he's saying, and this is a powerful secret. He's being revealing in this particular thing. So, as they say, it's a very famous line now. A lot of New Age management gurus also say that each step we take either opens a door to a new life or closes doors to a new possibility. So here what he's saying is that guna sanga, which way we are connecting, which way we are trying to experience, we want to call ourselves happy or sad, will largely determine what's going to be the next episode of our life, what is going to be the next phase of our life. So whatever we are doing today, a lot of people say that this theory of karma is most likely going to make us very fatalistic. No, but if you look at it, he's saying that he's giving a general theory that the way we connect with something sort of has something to offer as an explanation for what we are likely to be in future. So it's very futuristic, and there is, there is a kind of a warning sign. What are the things we shouldn't do? And there is also a kind of a very sublime recommendation for those of us who are willing to see it as to what we should do to reach a certain station in life, a certain frame of mind, a certain possibility in life in the light of our aspirations. If we aspire to be, for example, a rich man, then what are the things you're supposed to do? And the Shastra sort of is giving certain indications that you should have a lot of sattvic guna and should be very rajasic, and you shouldn't be lazy, you should work. There are a lot of advices how to sort of have those benefits. Let's look at Shankara Bhashya because he'll give you the traditional interpretation. But to me, you can also go beyond Shankara to make sense of some of these verses. Purusha, who is he? Bhokta. Bhokta, is he eating something? No. He's watching things. And that will be clear in the next verse. Purusha Bhokta Prakristha. What is this word Prakristha? Is he sitting in Prakriti? This is Purusha is Paraprakriti. Aparaprakriti is that which relates to the material aspect. So Prakrito Abvidya Lakshanayam Karyakarana Rupena Parinatayam Sthitaha. What does that mean? This whole Prakriti sort of modifies itself, and this Prakriti is essentially a form of ignorance. It's Avidya Lakshana. So it's essentially ignorance that we are calling it Prakriti because it's a mother of new material manifestations. Because of ignorance only we are trapped in the samsara. So this kind of a black hole which has manifested at this universe, that ignorance, which is Mula Prakriti, Prakritistha, Prakritim, then Karya Karana Rupena Parinatayam Sthitaha, and all these things which have manifested, modified. This is body, mind complexes. We are talking about the Shodasa Vikaras. In this particular circus theater, this fellow is coming and putting himself, is established there. Sthitaha, Prakritistaha, Prakritim Atmatvena. What is mean by Sthiti? Is he going to sit there? No. It is again a certain kind of a subjective sankalpa or an acceptance of where you are. This is a very, very spiritual thing, and think about it. This is it's very profound. So let's imagine that three people enter into a stadium, and the stadium is completely dark, and they have been given earplugs. They cannot hear anything, and it's completely dark. Therefore, they cannot see anything. Okay, three people enter, and they are made to sit at three different seats. And when before they enter, they are sort of told that there is some game going on, and you are supposed to watch it. It's completely dark. They are deaf. They can't even hear any, and they cannot touch anything. They're sitting nicely. And now they're going to experience it. In that kind of a situation, what are they going to experience? So, what they're going to experience has a lot to do with what's playing up in the mind, what is the aspiration they have, what is the baggage of experience or purva sanskaras they have. And then after some time, one is kind of thinking about a rugby match, the other one is thinking about a cricket match. One is from US, the other one is from South Asia. They're crazy about cricket. So he thinks about cricket. Maybe there's a cricket match going on. He maybe hears some faint noises here and there. And the other guy thinks there's a rugby match based on their own purva sanskaras, right? So actually, they are neither in a rugby match nor in a football match or in a cricket match, but it's your own psychological positioning which slowly creates a whole intellectual, emotional, subjective universe in which you have begun to participate, and you are calling yourself someone who is watching cricket. And the other one thinks and he calls himself that he's watching a rugby match, an American football match. And then they go through two different experiences. Let's add, to make it, to spice up the story, we can say there are some stimulations which can be sort of interpreted in different ways. Let's imagine that they play some background sound and music. So occasionally they cannot understand in language, it's in a foreign language, but just imagine that something is happening. So they can interpret based on whatever previous experience or sanskara or whatever they have. What is this Prakritistha in that sense? It's essentially a certain positioning, which is purely psychological, mental, or whatever. Same way he's saying Prakritim. Oh, Prakritistha means what? Shankaracharya says beautifully, Prakritim Atmatvena Gata iti. He thinks I'm inside this cricket match, I'm watching it. Similarly, he is in this body mind complex and he thinks I am this person. I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a cricketer, I'm a scientist. He has that superimposition. Atmatmana gata iti etad hi yasmad tasmad mukte upalabhyate. And because he thinks I'm inside a cricket match going on, I'm in the gallery watching it, he imagines things. And maybe there are a few stimulants in the story. If we add it, then it looks real. And he thinks it's a real cricket match going on. Actually, he's just sitting there. If you go to some of these, what do you call it? Disney, parks they have now in Delhi and Mumbai and stuff like that. So they'll put you in a small chamber where you'll sit in a vehicle and say that they'll tell you that you are now going into the space. So they create an artificial reality. And after some time, you really genuinely feel that you are traveling in a vehicle where there are humps and stuff like that, or maybe you're actually going through in a space, subtly you're going through space. They create that illusion and you enjoy it. You deliberately imagine you are inside and they give you some guidance and they say that you can actually be in charge of it. So just think about it. If you have been to any of these parks, amusement parks, similarly in this sansara, prakritim atmatvena gata iti etadhi yasmat tasmad mukte. Actually, there is nothing to experience. Of course, the senses are there, but substantially, this Purusha doesn't get involved. It's not like a biological being which gets involved. It's essentially just a kind of approximation and a psychological imposition that I am experiencing this reality born out of ignorance. Upalabhyate, upalabhate ityartha. What does he get? What does he experience? Prakriti jan, which is born out of Prakriti. What are they? Prakrititaha jatan, sukha dukkha, mohakara abhivaktan guna. So these are the qualities he experiences. Aham sukhi, aham dukhi, I'm happy, I'm sad. So these are born out of what? Out of Prakriti. What are these qualities? Three qualities: tamas, rajas, and sattva. If it's tamas, you will have strong mohatmaka anubhava. You'll have delusional experiences. You'll be lazy guy, watching TV, gossiping, feeling bad, depressed, feeling jealous. There's a lot of rajas. Then he's all the time in a mode to compete with others. So he's all the time tense and anxious and competing with others. Sattva, he's very quiet, relaxing, walking in a park. Depending on whatever tattva dominates in him. So this prakriti jatan sukha dukkha mohakara abhivaktan gunan sukhi dukhi mudaha panditaha ahamiti evam. So he has these feelings. And how does that all happen? Shankaracharya says that he's imagining that these are all reality. Fundamentally not real, phenomenally yes. Satyam api avidyayam sukha dukkha moheshu guneshu bhujyamaneshu yaha sangaha atma bhavaha. What is that sangha? Guna sangaha. Atma bhava. Sangha here is a kind of imagination that I am this, I am experiencing this. Satyam api avidyayam, when you are in this ignorance, born out of ignorance, in this sukha, dukkha, mohadishu, guneshu, bhujyamaneshu, which you are experiencing, which you are enjoying. You are clapping, you are liking this whole cricket match which is going on. It's essentially a dark field. You don't know what's going on. You're hearing some noises. Yaha sangha atma bhavaha sansarasya sapradhanam karanam janmanaha. And that sort of is the main reason as to where you're going to be born, what you're going to get next. So it's very beautiful. What you have done previously is largely accounting for what you're doing now, but there is a viveka there. That viveka thing is with all of us. When we have a bit of opening of the jnana chakyu, then we know what we want to do or not. Otherwise, we'll all become plastic dolls. There'll be no need for shastra. So there is definitely space for an independent thinking and action. Otherwise, Shastra will become completely useless. Anarthaka. Why? Because you have no freedom. Why should you read Shastra? Everything will happen the way the program has been written. So their sansar will become completely a mechanized, programmed game going on. So nobody will be interested. There is some indeterminacy. Indeterminacy means there is some kind of a freedom where control doesn't work. And what works there? Your own will, your own participation, what do you want to do, your ability to think about it, take a correct decision. And therefore he says, Pradhanam Karanam Janmanaha Sahajatha Kama Bhavati Tat Kratuhu Bhavati. The person, the way we desire of anything, we also do somebody who does that. Tat kratuhu bhavati. And he does that kind of work. And Swami Vivekananda used to all the time say, as you think, so you become. And so and then the modern management gurus say that if you do one good thing and that becomes a habit, and the habit becomes your character creates, your destiny. If you sort of dedicate yourself to that, it's all coming out of the Vedantic insights. बृहदारण्यक उपनिषद 4:4-5 इत्यादि श्रुतेः तद एतद आह कारणम हेतुः गुणसंगो गुणेषु संगः अस्य पुरुषस्य भोक्तुः सद असद योनि Janamasu. So that in fact determines whether we're going to be born in a Sat Yoni or Asad Yoni. Now, earlier we have studied Sat and Asad means what is really existing and what is non existing, what is visible, manifest, and what is unmanifest, right? Abhyakrita and Vyakrita. But here, Sad Asad refers to what is good and what is bad, what is desirable and what is not desirable. In that sense, Sad Asad Yoni is used. So, Sad will mean what? Being born as a god or in a very super rich, aristocratic, very cultured family. And Asad Yoni will become, animal life, that some people will have to take up that life. Tad etadaha karanam hetuhu. What is the cause of all this? Guna sangaha, guneshu sangaha. Sangha is what? Atma bhava. That I'm happy, I'm sad, depending on where you are sort of oriented. Asya Purushasya Bhuktuhu. Of this Purusha, who is the Bhukta, his birth in Sad and Asad Yoni is kind of determined by how he connects with these external reality and the guna. Satyaha cha asatyaha cha yoneyaha sad asad yoneyaha. Tasu sad asad yonishu janamani sad asad yoni janamani. Janamani teshu sad asad yoni janamasu vishabhuteshu karanam gunasangaha. So why we are born in a good family or bad family, as an animal or as a bird or as an angel or as an aristocrat, like for example, you must have seen that there are a lot of characters in history you would find were super sensitive, and they finished and read a lot of things when they're very young. And if you look at the lives of a lot of musicians, it's amazing as to how they could sort of do things. When Beethoven was kind of composing some of his best compositions, he was almost deaf and he was, people say, partially blind. I don't know the details, but he was an amazing character. And we have so many other people who have sort of given us great compositions, great music. And you cannot scientifically say that these are the external conditions because of which he could be so creative. We cannot explain it. There's no fixed result, or there's no rules or regulations to which we could easily explain it. And it's not completely out of place to sort of take into account. Maybe it's not fate, but karma. I mean, some people, you can take that into account. Maybe there are some previous sanskaras which sort of explains as to why he is able to manage to do that. अथवा सद असद योनि जन्मसु अस्य संसारस्य कारणं गुणसंग इति संसारपदम अध्याहार्यम. So this sansara thing, he's saying, why don't you sort of add it up to make sense of it? So this sansara happens because of our own actions or because of our desire to connect with certain sukha or dukkha, which again will boil down to how we identify ourselves with certain thing which is external to us. Where our mind is going, in simpler terms, is kind of going to give some hints, some indication as to how we are going to lead the next phase of our life or next life. And that explains why the sansaram, that we are born again and again, sort of goes on, this game goes on. Sad yonayaha, devadi yonayaha. So sad means superior births, like with gods and divinities and angels. But if you are a rationalist, you can just replace the word devata with maybe who is a precocious kid or genius, or super smart computer engineer, or super smart musician, or an artist, or a beautiful writer. Asad yonayaha paswadi yonayaha. And then aswadi, like animal births, but you can also say being born as a criminal, whatever. But here, actually, traditionally, they are very clearly mentioning that Sad Asad sort of also refers to Manushya Yoni. We're going there. Samarthya Sad Asad Yonayaha Manushya Yonayaha api aviruddha drashtavya. So, because Sad Asad, when you mention, you can also include that the Manushya Yoni is a kind of a mixture of Sad Asad. So they're somewhere in the middle point. So imagine that a lot of middle class guys or guys average good, average bad. So they're kind of a mixture of Sad Asad habits. Some high qualities, certain lower qualities, certain higher pools and certain lower pools in their nature. एतदुक्तं भवति प्रकृतिस्तत्त्वा आख्या अविद्या गुणेषु ससंगः कामः संसारस्य कारणमिति. So the main purpose of this whole dialogue is sort of is saying that as a result of our inherent and inherited, not inherent, but inherited ignorance or faulty understanding, we have that asakti or affinity or inclination or predilection towards samsara with certain forms of happiness and sadness. And we want to experience it. That's what we have liked in the last birth. And maybe in this birth, it's like people have a few bad habits and good habits. That, in a way, explaining samsara, which is the main source of our loss of freedom or agony. A lot of people are happy in samsara. But samsara itself is vacuous because it doesn't take you anywhere. It gives you certain experiences which will become valueless the next moment. If you deeply look into it, it just looks good. So far, you don't think about your life. So far, you don't think about it. The moment you start thinking about what am I liking, you lose interest in it. And that is what is called dosha darshana. And therefore, tasta parivarjanaya uchyate. And therefore, all these are mentioned here because this guna sangha is accountable for way we are going to be reborn. Why is it mentioned here? So that we know what not to experience, what to stay away from, and how to sort of have vairagya so that we can go and think about the self and study Upanishads. Asya cha nibriti karanam jnana vairagye sangsanyase Gita Sastra prasiddham. And therefore, the Gita Sastra that we are discussing is full of this advice by Bhagavan that ultimately, if we want to experience what is the beauty of our whole spiritual sadhana, the life, if you want to go beyond what is immediately available to our eyes and ears and the sense organs, the mind, etc., then the real journey starts when we sort of withdraw from the external world and look within. And that is what Bhagavad Gita kind of underlines, emphasizes. Tatcha jnanam purastad upanyastam khetra khetragya vishaya. And that is what sort of is already mentioned here in this chapter about what is khetra and khetragya. Yat jnatva amritam asnute. Bhagavan has said that already. That if you understand that there is this khetra and there is a khetragya, there is a paraprakriti, there is a aparaprakriti, there is this purusha and there is this prakriti, and look at these doubles, it's just one atma taking these various forms and how this whole game is kind of going on. If you can have the viveka to see what's happening and then you turn to the self and read a bit of Shastra and all, you can unravel the mystery of your existence as to why sometimes you are sad or happy or depressed or excited, and then lose interest in many things which are blinding you and they're giving you a lot of problems. You apparently are happy but restless in the end. But I can give you some peace of mind if you steadfastly sort of turn to me, then you will be able to overcome Maya, otherwise, so powerful, Doratya. Therefore, Bhagavan says, Tatsa Jnana Purastad Upanistam Kshetra Kshetrajna Visayam Yad Gyatvam Amritam Asnute Iti Uttam Cha Anyapohena Atad Dharma Adhyarupena Cha. So, he sort of has mentioned that we have this Adhyarupapavada. So Bhagavan has, he has sarvatra, he has hands and legs everywhere, he has eyes everywhere, And then we sort of neti, actually nothing exists, these are all appearances. And then we go to the Atma Vastu. We start with thinking about Ishvara and all these names and forms, and then we go beyond them, and then we experience that real freedom. That's what the Vedanta sort of all the time says. Then we go to the next verse, but before that, this quickly, let's look at the sort of Madhusudana. It's a very short commentary, not much. कार्य करण कर्तृत्वे हेतु प्रकृति रुच्यते पुरुष सुख दुखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतु रुच्यते कार्यम what is that शरीरम करणानि इंद्रियाणि तत्स्थानि so which is kind of established there त्रयोदश देह आरंभकानि भूतानि विषयाः च इह कार्यग्रहणेन गृह्यन्ते. So these are the 13 is now, is Madhusudana is kind of saying this is what is the Treyadasa, so what is the Prakriti, is counting them. Okay. Gunascha sukha dukkha mohatmakaha karnasrayatvad karnagrahanena grihante. And this, how do you experience happy or sad? You need the indriyas, isn't it? So you want to be happy. So you need the sense organs to sort of give you happiness because you see a beautiful painting or you smell good, hot, yummy food. You say, oh, I had it before, and you remember, you feel happy or sad depending on the experience, good or bad. Sukha dukha muhatmakaha karana asrayatvat karana grahanena grihante. Because they are karana asrita. Because without the sense organs, you cannot have that psychological experience and then describe it as happiness or sadness or whatever. तेषां कार्यकरणानां कर्तृत्वे तदाकारपरिणामे हेतुः कारणं प्रकृतिः उच्यते महर्षिभिः. So all the wise men sort of wise using this word maharshi because prakriti is, as you know, is a Sankhya theory, which is sort of bringing it here, and therefore he's saying that these are these 13, and these 16 are actually karya so far the Sankhya Mata is concerned. So here, what he's saying is that this parinama, the prakriti has kind of modified itself, and this karya and karana, and then he's saying that that is what I'm referring to here. Hetu karanam prakriti uchyate maharshibhi. Karya karana iti dirgha pathepi, same thing which Shankaracharya has mentioned, that even if you say karya karana, that we have discussed earlier. Okay, even if you say karya and karana, not a problem, he'll explain the same thing. I think by mistake I went to the previous verse, but not a problem. We'll quickly finish and come to the next one. कार्यकारण इति दीर्घपाठेपि स एव अर्थः एवं प्रकृतेः संसारकारणत्वं व्याख्याय पुरुषस्यापि यादृशं तदाह पुरुषः क्षेत्रज्ञः परा प्रकृति इति प्राग व्याख्यातः, which has been explained earlier. स सुख दुःख मोहानां भोग्यानां सर्वेषामपि भोक्तृत्वे वृत्ति उपरक्त उपलम्भे हेतुः उच्यते. That Purusha is kind of is the cause of whether you're enjoying or you're not enjoying whatever is happening. That is what this Purusha is the cause. That is what he's saying. Here there is a word called uparakta, and that is vritti uparakta. This is an important word. Why is he calling this vritti uparakta? Because when these connectivity is happening between the sense organs and the outside things with the manas, with the help of the mind, this Purusha, which is inside, which is a very subtle thing, the subjectivity, gets interested in it. There is uparaga. So there is some sort of an interest. And that is how he either likes it or dislikes it. As I was telling you, that there's a film going on, you're going by the theater, but if you have nothing to do with the film, like for example, there is an old couple and they're going to a temple, and there is this movie theater, and they're looking at the billboard and they see the stars, the face and the name and the musician, everything is mentioned. Who's the director? Do they have anything with the film? So they experience nothing, just look at it and they move forward. On the other hand, if they're young boys going there and they want to see the movie and they're interested, they're the movie buff, they have a discussion, there could be an argument whether to see this movie or not. And somebody is too interested, doesn't have money, the other one has interest, the third one may be a little angry with the all that we have discussed, right? So lastly, it's the inclination. It's sort of boiling down to how we think about it, how we relate to it. And that is how it becomes the cause. That is what it's saying. Let's look at the verse number 21st. So, Purusha prakritisto hi bhukti prakritijan gunan karanam guno sangasya sadasad yonijanamasu. Prakritihi, what is that? Maya. Tam mithya eva, because Maya is anirvachaniya. Here he's saying mithya, which is fundamentally from Vedantic standpoint, is not satya for truth. So mithya eva tadatmiyana upagataha. So how does he become prakritistaha or mayastaha? Is it a real thing? It's like a platform or a car that he can go and sit on it? Purusha? No. That paraprakriti? No. So what does it mean? So he's saying it's an identification. He identifies with that. That is the only thing, nothing else. Upagataha prakritistaha. He eva purusha bhunkte upalabhate. He gets it. प्राप्त करता है. Prakriti jan gunan. Prakriti means prakriti jatan. Born out of prakriti. In what sense? Is it like a mother giving birth to a child? No. This whole prakriti is said to be modifying itself as per Sankhya Mata. And the prakriti becomes buddhi and then ahankara and the tanmatras and the jnanendriyas and karmendriyas and and the mahabhutas and all that, manas included, becomes this whole sansara, the prapancha. Prakriti jan gunan, and these guna here mentions sukha dukha and karanam guna sangasya. So what does he say? Ataha prakriti guna upalamba hetushu. And what is the cause? Whether you are going to have a good food tonight or bad food, good experience, bad food. It's a lot of what are the provisions you have? What can you pay for? Sad asad yoni janamasu. Sad yonaya devadyaha teshu. So all this is same thing. Sankaracharya mentions repeating it. He satvigam ishtamha. This is funny. Why Deva and Pashu? Sad and Asad. I think this is more interesting than whether Devata and Pashu and all. Whether some people may not they may not be interested in this whole theory about reincarnation, but still this is relevant because he's saying that if you are doing good things, the chances are that your mind in future we will consider something which is sattvika as ishta, something which is good, something which is sublime. You develop a taste for it. So let's imagine Devata, it's just a metaphor to tell us that we will become a better human being and will develop a taste for something sublime, which is great. So that's what he's saying. Devatadyaha teshu hi satvikam ishtam phalam bhujyate. They'll get satvika phala. Asad yonayaha paswadyaha teshu hi tamasam anishtam phalam bhujyate. So the animals are what? They have, look at these insects, fireflies. They see fire, they see their friends getting burned, they still go. And like, for example, you must be watching Animal Planet. A lot of animals are kind of bound by their innate nature and how the body responds. They cannot innovate to become wise or anything. Human beings have a better chance to become spiritual and go towards the sattvic thing. Sad asad yonaya dharma dharma misratvad. That's how he's bringing in the human beings. That this sad asad yoni, because dharma and adharma misratvad. And who are they? Who are us? Brahmanyadaha manusyaha teshu. Like Brahmanas. And now this word Brahmana, is very controversial. The moment it's mentioned, somebody will come with a stick and say, oh, your society is full of caste system, this and that. Forget about this. Now in English, they use the word Pandit for an expert, isn't it? So use it that way. So you have people who are intellectually inclined or maybe morally inclined. So, or people who are martially inclined or maybe commercially inclined, depending what are the inclinations we're talking about. So, manusya teshu rajasam mishram phalam uchyate. So, mohatmaka, there are the lower category of people who are sort of deluded, a kind of plasticity determines who they are, And then Bhagavan, the spiritual guys, the kind of highly elastic and stuff like that. And then you have a mixture, which are the human beings, where there's an aspiration, but there's a downward pull. And they are Rajasika because they're all the time on tension, they want to be better, and they're having certain lower pull in them, and Mishra Phalam Uchyate. Ataha Tatra Asya Purushasya Gunasangha. What is the Gunasangha? He's saying Sattva Raja Tamo Gunatmaka Prakriti Tadhyatma Abhimana Eva. So there is the Prakriti has three aspects: Sattvika, balance, and Rajas, Dukhatmaka, Tamas, Mohatmaka. And then this Purusha and this pure consciousness which is there in us. I'm not talking about the Vedantic states, not yet, but this whole Sattva, the Paraprakriti that we have, this Chaitanya thing in us, he sort of identifies that he thinks this intoxicating drink is good, tamasic thing. And because it sort of identifies with that, the play of that particular force, that energy, that tamasika and sattvika, rajasika, that whole urja or whatever you call it, it plays out. It plays out, and then he identifies, he gets involved in it. That is what explains where he's going to go. Okay, abhimana eva karanam. Karanam of what? Whether he's going to be born in a certain way, and what is the quality of his bhaktitva. Natu asangasya tasya swataha sansara ityartha. Because Purusha by nature will not become a sansari, because it's viparita of prakriti. And this Purusha, the para prakriti, it by nature doesn't get entangled in samsara. It is a very subtle thing. But because of identification, it's like the best story will be like this. And I have seen quite a few guys, and you must have also seen in your lives, those of you who have done engineering or professional courses, you'd find some of these boys were extremely innocent, who do not know anything about the world, raised by their parents, not in hospitals, and they come and land up in a boarding school or hostel, college hostel, and they undergo all that. 3 4 years after, some of them turn out to be the most mischievous guys. But a dull student comes, and after 2 3 years, you find he's extremely serious in his studies. He was a mischievous guy during school days, but he's super serious in his studies. What explains the change in their behavior over a period of time? The choices they're making. So he's sort of saying the samsara largely depends on what we connect with. That means what is the intensity of our happiness or sadness here is largely explicable in the light of what kind of choices we are making, what we want to align with, what kind of inclinations we have. We may have inclinations, we may fight and get out of it and move upwards, or move in a different direction than where we are being pulled towards if we don't like it. So that is what is hinted here. Athva gunasanga guneshu sabdadishu sukha dukkha mohatmakeshu sango abhilasaha. And what is that sangha? Yeah, the other way say atma bhava, he's saying more or less abhilasa, very close to the Buddhist way of looking at vasana, desire, abhilasa. That is what is sangha, attachment. Phala sangha athava guna sangha. So first he says guna sangha can be identification with sattva, tama, and rajas, or the sukha dukhatmaka, these experiences, you are yearning for one of these experiences, and that is what is your guna sangha. Kamaha iti yavat, that is desire, vasana. Sa eva asya sad asad yoni janamasu karanam. That's why it determines where we are going to be reborn. Sa yatha kama bhavati tat kratur bhavati. Yat kratur bhavati tat karma kurute. Yat karma kurute tad avisampadhyate iti shrutehe. So it's 445 of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So what he's saying is that the way a person desires, जथा काम भवति, जैसे दिमाग होता है, वो ऐसा काम करता है, उसको करने का ऐसा करता बनता है, वो फिर जैसा वो सोचता है करने का, वो फिर वो करने लगता है. He starts doing that, he starts to achieve, and the way he does it, he gets the corresponding results thereof. He gets the phala of that. So that is how the whole sansara starts happening to us, all of us. इति श्रुतेः अस्मिन् अपि पक्षे मूलकारणत्वेन प्रकृतितादात्म्याभिमानो द्रष्टव्यः. So you please understand, he's saying that the identification of this mula, the ignorance, and that is what essentially is an explanation for the whole samsara, the whole cycle of birth and death. Now let's look at the verse number 22nd. What does the Purusha do? This Purusha and Prakriti, we have already mentioned that one explains the Kartutva, how agency comes into play, and then why we are born in good families or bad families. This is a link with earlier when Arjuna says what happens to a person in 6th chapter. He does this sadhana, but he's dying in the middle. Bhagavan has said he'll be born. In light of what sort of sadhana he has done, nothing goes waste. That is reiterated here by saying that what kind of choices we make determines whether you're going to be born in Sadyoni or Asadyoni, in a superior life, station or an inferior station of life. Next time or within this life. I'm just trying to be a little less traditional. So forgive me for that, but I just want to put it in a context that it becomes more palatable for people who are more rational, not bound up by traditional ways of looking at things. Purusha Prakritista, that we have done. Now in the next verse, he is talking about Tadevam Prakriti Mithya Tadatmyat Purushasya Sansaro Na Sarupena Ityuktam. By nature, we are not sansaris. We are not insects to be sort of swimming in the gutter. No, that's not what we are. We are Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. By nature, we are all pure. It's because of ignorance that we think we like to be here in the samsara. That is what Vedanta teaches us. So, by nature, we may be in a bad situation in life. We may be in a very excitable situation in life. We may be very elated. We may be liking some aspect of our material being, but actually we don't like it. Actually, we don't hate anything or you don't like anything. By nature, we have only one aspiration to have nirati sukha, niratisaya sukha, complete happiness. And that alone is possible if we realize who we are, if we understand where we are from, where we are going. We are not from anywhere, not going anywhere. We just are out of our real self, trapped in ignorance, and our real destination is to return to the self. That is what Vedanta explains. Na swarupena ityuktam kidrisham punatasya swarupam. So, what is the Purusha swarupa? So, what is this essential nature? Is the question. Okay, listen to me. Yatra na sambhavati sansara ityakankhayam tasya swarupam sakyan nirdesan aha. So Bhagavan is sort of saying, okay, I'll tell you. Don't get disheartened. Don't feel bad that you are not born in a sadhyoni, in a very higher station of life. You may not be right now the smartest guy, the smartest girl. You may not be the most wise or most moral. But don't worry about it. Where you are, what you're doing, what you like, what you are experiencing has very little to do with what's your inner self. What is the Purusha? What is the Paraprakriti in you? What is the Kshetrajna in you? And that is very inspiring. The verse number 22nd. What is our self like? What is that Purusha in us? Upadrastanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmiti cha pyukta dehesmin purusha paraha. This Purusha in all of us, because of his guna sangha, we are born in bad or good situations within and in the next life. We just heard that. Now he's twisting it and saying, do you know this? This is the ultimate thing, this Purusha. But it takes different names depending on where you actually trap it through all kinds of stupid things. So this Purusha is described in different ways depending on from what vantage point you're looking at it, how you want to understand it. The same player who is standing at a particular place in a cricket field or in a football field can be described as playing different roles depending on who is the expert commentating on that game. So he's explaining One word for this Purusha in us is called Upadrashta. And he will explain each word of these. And these are very important concepts to keep in mind. The next word is it's also Anumanta. Upadrashta is somebody who watches the whole reality that is experienced from very close quarters. That is Upadrashta. Anumanta. Anumanta, there'll be beautiful examples, we'll discuss that. Anumanta is the guy who sort of watches everything without getting involved. It does anumanana or anumodana. He says, okay, yes. It's like the grandmother in the house who doesn't involve. She's a peace loving, kind, compassionate, approves of everything, but watches everything. Anumanta, Bharta. And then she is the boss of the house. So everything happens because of her kindness. So she is the person, the land and the house, everything is in her name. She's the matriarch. So she's the Bharta, even though she's not cooking for anyone. Everything happens because of her, like the king in a country. She's Bharta. And this Atma, because of that, it gives light to everything it experiences. So it's Bharta. And a Bhokta, because of this identification, it becomes Bhokta, right? Because of this whole Guna Sangha and thing. And Maheshwaraha, Mahansa Aso Ishwaraha. It's Maheshwaraha because it's the most important thing in a human system. It's Maheshwaraha. Paramatma, Paramatmeti, it's also called Paramatma, same Purusha. See, it's taking from the biological body mind complex. Slowly will lift it. That means we are dropping the garbs or the guises or the cloaks in which it's wrapped. You're taking off the dresses and slowly from Upadrashta it becomes Anumanta, then a Bharta, then a Bhokta, then it becomes a Maheshwara. We are taking away adjectives. It becomes purer and purer. It becomes Paramatma, cha apiyukto. Dehesmin Purusha Paraha. The same Purusha, which is the ultimate thing, which is there in it. Why is he saying this? Why is he saying Paramatma in all of us? Yes, it is there in all of us. So, yes, Purusha Sankhya says all different. Yes, we are different from Sankhya. We are able to describe the Purusha, which is there in individual beings and all of us, as Paramatma because we believe in one Atma. The same Atma split in different systems looks like we are all different Purushas. And how does that happen? Then Purva Papa Punya. It's a little cyclical. You might have a lot of suspicion, it's very, very difficult to understand. So these are adhyasas. Because of ignorance, we see ourselves as individuals, and because of that ignorance, we have tremendous attachment to things, and it's explained. And to get rid of those layers of ignorance, we have to accept phenomenally that we have papa and punya. Actually, really, we don't have. But actually, phenomenally, we have, and then we have to do karma. And slowly, these layers will fall off. Okay? And then when they fall off, then it's like a wood base which is kind of lying amongst different logs of wood. And the carpenter's wife sort of was trying to cut that into pieces and make a chair or something, some furniture. But when it starts chiseling it from one side, it smells a little different. So actually, it's sandalwood. Then this it informs it's smelling different. And then she has two young sons, and they start cleaning it and chiseling it, and then they put it in the sun. So the mud and the earth and everything that it is covered with goes, and the sandalwood gives that beautiful smell, that essence. It's very costly. So they would not make a funny furniture or throw it off. The same way, when we remove the dirt and filth, which is kind of hiding from us, what real nature that ours is, and that's how we are sort of thinking in a wrong way about who we are. If we can remove those faulty understandings, we'll be self-realized. So we'll do the details tomorrow. Now, I just wanted to mention that we had plans for Badrinath because of some heavy rain in the, uphill. The yatra has been cancelled. Most likely it will be day after. So tomorrow, I'm expecting we'll have classes. After that, I'll let you know whether we'll do YouTube uploads or how to sort of deal with it. So I'll stop YouTube here, and then we'll have any question answer if you have. Any question?